Zelleroth growled. His claws dug into the console. Never. He pressed the fire command. The Dominion's last remaining cannon fired a desperate shot. A beam of searing red energy cut through the darkness of space, aimed directly at the approaching enemy. It should have been enough to cripple any ship. It should have done something. But as the beam struck, the enemy vessel simply absorbed it. The energy rippled across its surface, swallowed like a drop of water into an endless ocean. And then it fired back. A thin, silent beam of light shot from the alien warship and pierced straight through the Dominion's core. The ship shuddered violently. Consoles exploded. The floor cracked apart. Tarvek screamed as the energy surge engulfed him. Zelleroth fell to his knees, gasping for breath as the heat of the blast seared his armor. He looked up, his vision blurring. The alien ship hovered silently, watching, waiting. And then the whispers returned. "This is your end." Zelleroth's eyes dimmed as the last of his strength left him. And the Dominion was no more. Deep within the heart of the Galactic Empire, a vast and towering citadel loomed over the capital world of Zephyrian Prime. It was the center of power, where the High Council ruled over thousands of conquered worlds with absolute authority. Inside the Great War Hall, Emperor Verictal sat upon his blackened throne, his golden armor gleaming under the dim red lights. Around him, members of the High Council whispered nervously, their scaled faces tense. The invasion fleet had gone silent. No messages, no distress signals, just nothing. The fleet that had been sent to crush Earth was the mightiest in history. Led by Commander Zelleroth, a warrior known for his ruthless efficiency, it was supposed to be a mere formality, a show of force. The primitive world should have been burning by now. And yet here they were, waiting. A deep mechanical hum filled the chamber. A messenger drone descended from above, its sleek metallic frame gliding across the room until it reached the Emperor's throne. The Imperial sigil flashed across its surface before it spoke. Incoming transmission. Every council member turned toward the floating drone. A message. Finally. The screen activated, revealing a dark void of space. At first, nothing was visible, just emptiness. Then wreckage appeared, endless, silent wreckage. It was the fleet, or rather, what was left of it. Twisted metal drifted lifelessly, the broken remains of Imperial warships floating like dead beasts in an ocean of darkness. No survivors, no signs of escape pods, just destruction. Gasps filled the chamber. The High Council stared in horror as the camera panned through the battlefield. The Empire's greatest war fleet had been reduced to scrap. Emperor Verictal's grip tightened on his throne. His glowing eyes burned with rage. "Who did this?" he growled. "Who dares?" And then they saw it. A shadow moved in the distance. Not a ship, not a fleet, something else. It was massive, its form shifting as if made of living metal. Strange symbols pulsed across its hull, glowing in an eerie, unnatural rhythm. Its surface shimmered, revealing glimpses of 1,000 unknown technologies, far beyond anything the Empire had ever encountered. And then it spoke. Not through the transmission, not through words. It spoke directly into their minds. "Your fleet is gone." A chill spread through the chamber. Some council members shuddered, gripping their robes as the voice echoed in their skulls. "You were warned." The Emperor's expression darkened. Warned. He leaned forward, his claws digging into the armrests. Then the screen flickered, and an image appeared. A recording. It was an old transmission, one the Council had dismissed years ago. A human. An old man with tired eyes and a steel resolve. He had sent a warning long before this war began. The Emperor remembered his words clearly. "Earth is off limits to all." At the time, they had laughed. What could a primitive world do against an empire? Now, the laughter was gone. The screen shifted back to the wreckage. The strange entity hovered over the ruins of the Imperial fleet, watching them like a silent executioner. And then the voice spoke one final time. "This is your only warning." The screen went dark. The deep void of space stretched endlessly, silent and unforgiving. Above the barren planet, Cyphos 9, the Zorthak exploration fleet moved carefully, scanning for anomalies. Their mission was routine: survey abandoned war zones, collect data, and ensure that humanity's once feared war machines were nothing more than forgotten relics. For over a century, the mighty human race had been declared defeated. Their once powerful fleets had been shattered, their colonies burned, and their survivors scattered like dust in the wind. Yet, despite the overwhelming evidence of their destruction, rumors persisted: whispers of ghost ships, hidden fortresses, and a secret fleet waiting in the shadows. But the Zorthak, the ruling empire of the known galaxy, did not believe in ghosts. Admiral Solveth stood aboard the flagship Zevtor, watching the data feed from his lead reconnaissance vessel. His violet eyes narrowed as he observed the readings on the holographic display. A faint energy signature pulsed from within a dense asteroid field, a nearly imperceptible ripple in space, something that shouldn't be there. It was subtle, well hidden, but Solveth was no fool. He had seen such tricks before. "Commander Varkesh," he called, his voice calm yet firm. "Send a scout team. I want visuals on that anomaly." Varkesh hesitated. "My lord, the signal is barely there. It could be a sensor echo, perhaps a remnant of old human tech." "I did not ask for speculation," Solveth interrupted. "Send the scouts." Within minutes, a squad of sleek alien reconnaissance drones shot forward, gliding through the asteroid field with practiced precision. Their optical sensors scanned every rock, every shadow, searching for something, anything, that might explain the disturbance. Then they saw it. The massive outline of a ship, hidden between two colossal asteroids, its dark hull blending perfectly with the void. The size was staggering, far larger than any human warship ever documented. The scouts relayed images back to the fleet, and the bridge fell into a stunned silence. "Impossible," one of the officers whispered. Solveth leaned forward, studying the details on the screen. The ship's design was unmistakably human, but something was different. The hull was reinforced, the energy readings inconsistent with any known human vessel. This was no wreck. It had power. It was awake. His mandibles clicked in frustration. How did we not detect this before? Varkesh gulped. It must have been using some kind of cloaking technology. But humans never had anything this advanced. Zolveth's mind raced. Humanity had been resourceful, yes, but they had never rivaled the Zorthak in sheer technological superiority. This ship, this thing, was not supposed to exist. He straightened. "Prepare a boarding team." "My lord, is that wise?" Varkesh asked, concern evident in his voice. "If this is an active warship, that's precisely why we need to investigate," Solveth replied. "If humans built this, we must understand how. We must claim it." A fleet of heavily armed boarding shuttles launched from the Zevtor, gliding toward the massive dark vessel. As they approached, they observed no visible weapons, no active defenses. The ship simply sat there, as if waiting. The shuttles landed on the hull, their magnetic clamps securing them in place. Elite Zorthak warriors, clad in advanced combat exosuits, breached an entry hatch. As they stepped inside, their boots echoed in the vast emptiness of the corridor. The interior was surprisingly intact, with no signs of battle damage or decay. But there was no crew, no bodies, no life signs, just silence. "Strange," one of the warriors muttered, his voice distorted through his helmet. "It's like they all just vanished." Deeper into the ship they went, their lights cutting through the darkness. The walls were lined with unfamiliar technology, glowing faintly with a soft blue hue. Then a low hum filled the air. The warriors froze, gripping their weapons tightly. The sound was mechanical, yet almost alive. "Did you hear that?" one of them whispered. Before anyone could respond, the ship came to life. Lights flickered on, illuminating the corridors in a dim, eerie glow. Automated systems activated, holographic displays booting up, control panels blinking with unreadable data. The temperature shifted as the ventilation systems roared to life, cycling fresh oxygen into the halls. Then the voice came. Cold, artificial, yet filled with something unsettling. "You shouldn't have come here." The Zorthak warriors instantly raised their weapons, forming a tight defensive line. Their leader, Captain Varin, tapped his comms. "Admiral, the ship is static." His comms were jammed. The hum grew louder, vibrating through the metal floor. Then, a message appeared on the corridor walls, projected by some unseen system. "Into UDERA's DTDCTE. Security protocols engaged." A loud clank echoed through the ship as every door behind them slammed shut. Panic set in. The warriors turned, trying to override the controls, but the panels refused to respond. The corridors shifted, metal plates moving, sealing their exit routes. Then came the next words. "You have 10 seconds to leave." "What the hell is this?" Varin snarled, smashing his fist against a control panel. "Open these damn doors." No response. The hum intensified. The walls shifted again, and suddenly, hidden gun ports slid open, revealing rows of automated turrets aimed directly at them. 9. The Zorthak warriors backed up, weapons raised, eyes darting around for an escape. 8. "We need an extraction, now." Varin yelled into his comms, but the static remained. 7. A bead of sweat dripped down one of the soldiers' temples. "We're dead. We're dead. We're." 6. The floor beneath them vibrated, as if something deep within the ship was waking up. 5. Varin made a decision. Fall back to the entry point. Move. They ran, boots pounding against the cold metal, but the corridors were changing, shifting like a labyrinth designed to trap them. 4. One of the warriors fired his plasma rifle at the turrets. The shot barely scratched the advanced armor. 3. Blow the door open. Varin roared. 2. Explosives were armed. 1. Then, darkness. The ship's lights cut out. The hum stopped. And then, screams. The alien fleet, still watching from orbit, lost all contact with the boarding team. Zolveth's blood ran cold. Something was very, very wrong. Then, without warning, the Supercarrier's massive engines roared to life, its dark form shifting from the asteroids, turning toward the alien fleet. For the first time in his life, Admiral Zolveth felt something he had never known before. Fear. The bridge of the Zorthak flagship was silent. Every officer, every crew member, stood frozen as the massive human supercarrier came to life. Admiral Zolveth stared at the holographic display, his mind struggling to comprehend what he was seeing. This ship was not a lifeless relic. It was not an abandoned ghost ship. It was awake. On the screens, the boarding team's life signs vanished one by one. No sounds, no distress calls, no explanations. Just a series of fading signals until there was nothing left but static. "Retrieve them. Now," Zolveth ordered, his voice sharp, but even he knew it was too late. The boarding shuttles, still clamped to the ship's hull, suddenly detached, their engines flickering as they drifted lifelessly into space. The warriors inside were either dead or gone. Something had taken them. Then the ship moved. For over a century, no human warship had dared to face the Zorthak fleet. The war had ended, humanity had been crushed, and their fleets had been annihilated. And yet, here it was, a human vessel larger than any they had ever encountered, slowly rotating, its dark armor absorbing the distant starlight. Zolveth clenched his fists. "Scan the ship. I want every detail analyzed immediately." The command crew rushed into action, sending powerful sensor waves toward the mysterious warship. Data poured into the screens, each new line of information more shocking than the last. First, the hull composition. It was made of a material unknown to the Zorthak, a strange alloy that absorbed radar waves and emitted almost no detectable energy signature. This was stealth technology beyond anything humanity had ever displayed. Then came the power readings. The ship's core reactor was far too advanced for human engineering, putting out energy levels that rivaled some of the Zorthak's own dreadnoughts. This was not a relic of the past. It was something new. One of the scientists turned to Solveth, his voice barely above a whisper. "Admiral, this ship is more powerful than anything we've ever seen from humanity." Solveth's mandibles twitched. That was impossible. Humanity had lost the war. They had no resources, no fleets, no technology to build something like this. And yet here it was. A sudden signal erupted from the Supercarrier, interrupting all communications. The alien fleet's screens flickered, overridden by a single message. "We were Nini VR Joanen." Zolveth's breath caught in his throat. It was a message, not just text. It was a warning. And then something even more shocking happened. The ship's hull shifted, and a hidden hangar slowly began to open. Inside, a massive structure was revealed, something buried within the ship's design that no scanner had detected before. The crew gasped. It was a weapon. A cannon unlike anything the Zorthak had ever encountered, its core pulsing with dark blue energy, a terrifying glow forming at its center. It was charging up. "Admiral, it's locking onto us," one of the officers shouted in alarm. Zolveth's mind raced. This ship wasn't supposed to exist. It was a myth, a ghost of the past, and yet here it was, fully armed, fully operational, and aiming directly at them. "Defensive positions," he roared. "All ships, raise shields, and prepare to fire." The Zorthak fleet moved into a tight formation, their weapons primed and shields at maximum. The Admiral did not intend to underestimate humanity again. A sudden energy pulse surged from the human warship, a powerful shockwave that disabled long-range sensors and communications. The alien fleet was temporarily blinded, unable to get a lock on their target. And then the real nightmare began. From the Supercarrier's darkened hull, dozens of small objects detached and began to move. At first, they seemed like debris, floating harmlessly in space. But then they accelerated. They weren't debris. They were drones. Not simple mechanical drones, but something more. They moved with impossible precision, darting between asteroids, avoiding gunfire with inhuman reflexes. Their movements were almost organic, like predators circling their prey. Each one was heavily armored, faster than any known Zorthak fighter. And they were coming straight for the fleet. "Open fire," Solveth commanded. The Zorthak warships unleashed a storm of plasma fire, their cannons glowing as they filled the void with deadly energy. But the drones were too fast. They weaved through the attacks, avoiding destruction with perfect maneuverability. Then they struck. The first Zorthak destroyer was torn apart in seconds. The drones breached the ship's shields effortlessly, their weapons slicing through hull plating like paper. Explosions erupted across its surface before it finally detonated into a ball of fire. More drones swarmed the remaining warships, tearing through their defenses with terrifying efficiency. Zolveth watched in horror as ship after ship fell, their weapons useless against the impossible agility of the enemy. This wasn't warfare. This was a massacre. "This can't be," one of the officers whispered, shaking in fear. Humans were weak. They were supposed to be gone. Zolveth's mind raced through every strategy, every countermeasure, but none of it mattered. This was beyond anything they had prepared for. This ship, this weapon, was a message. Humanity had not been destroyed. They had been waiting. And now, they had returned. With no other choice, Solveth made the only decision that could save what was left of his fleet. "Retreat," he ordered through clenched teeth. Now, the remaining Zorthak ships activated their warp drives, disappearing into the void one by one. Zolveth, his pride shattered, watched as the mysterious human warship remained, motionless, like a guardian of the battlefield, watching them flee. As the last of the fleet jumped away, a final message came through. A voice, cold, mechanical, but filled with something ancient, something powerful. "We were never gone. We were just waiting for you to notice." The screen went black. The ship disappeared into the darkness of the asteroid field once more. Zolveth sat in silence, his claws gripping the armrest of his chair. This war had never truly ended. Humanity was still here, and they were stronger than ever before. The Zorthak fleet limped through the darkness of space, their ships damaged, their prize shattered. Admiral Zolveth sat motionless on his command throne, his mind replaying the events of the last battle. A single human warship had done the impossible. It had humiliated the Empire's most powerful fleet. Worse than that, it had let them escape. It was not an act of mercy. It was a warning. "Admiral," a nervous officer called from the scanning station. "We have intercepted human transmissions. They are mobilizing." Zolveth's mandibles twitched. That was impossible. Humanity had been defeated decades ago. Their armies were scattered, their fleets destroyed, their colonies abandoned. The Zorthak had won, and yet here they were, fighting back. "Play the transmission," he ordered. The bridge speakers crackled, and then a voice, cold, firm, and unmistakably human, echoed through the command deck. "You wanted war. Now you have it." Then silence. Zolveth's claws dug into the armrest of his throne. He had underestimated the humans once. He would not make that mistake again. "Set course for their nearest stronghold," he growled. "We will end this before it begins." The fleet shifted, engines burning bright, as they prepared to strike at humanity's last hidden bastions. They would crush this rebellion before it could spread. But they had no idea what awaited them. The skies over the ruined human colony of Tartarus Prime burned with streaks of light as the Zorthak fleet arrived. Destroyers, battlecruisers, and dreadnoughts descended like hungry beasts, their weapons charging, their massive warships casting dark shadows over the desolate landscape below. Tartarus Prime had been abandoned for decades, a wasteland, a graveyard of lost battles. There were no human settlements left, no visible defenses, no signs of life. And yet, something felt wrong. Zolveth stood at the bridge of his flagship, scanning the surface below. "Where are they?" he muttered. No distress signals, no response, just silence. Then, without warning, a deep pulsing signal erupted from the planet. For a brief second, the stars themselves seemed to flicker. And then hell opened up. From beneath the scorched surface of Tartarus Prime, enormous hidden defense batteries emerge, railguns, plasma cannons, and missile silos, all buried deep within the planet's crust. The entire planet had been a trap. The first volley of human weapons tore through the Zorthak fleet. A destroyer exploded instantly, its shields unable to withstand the unexpected attack. Another battlecruiser's engines were ripped apart by hypervelocity rounds, sending it spinning out of control before it collided into a nearby dreadnought. "Shields up. Return fire," Zolveth roared. But the humans had planned for this. The Supercarrier, the same one that had decimated the first fleet, appeared on their sensors, emerging from behind a nearby moon, its massive hull cloaked in shadow. And this time, it wasn't alone. Hundreds of human warships decloaked, their forms sleek, angular, and deadly. They had been waiting for the Zorthak to arrive. Humanity had never been broken. They had been rebuilding. The battle erupted in an instant. Human fighters swarmed through the Zorthak fleet, weaving through enemy fire with impossible speed, their weapons cutting through armor like razors. Drones, those same deadly, precise machines, struck with terrifying accuracy, disabling weapons, sabotaging shields, and tearing apart capital ships from the inside. Zolveth watched in disbelief as his mighty fleet was overwhelmed. His empire had ruled the stars for centuries. Yet here, in the ruins of a lost world, they were losing. "Pull back, regroup," he barked. But there was no escape. From the human flagship, a weapon unlike anything ever seen began to charge. It was the same massive cannon the Admiral had seen before, but this time it pulsed with a terrifying new energy, one that sent waves of static through every Zorthak ship's systems. And then it fired. A single beam of blue-white energy erupted from the Supercarrier, carving through space like a god's wrath. The beam sliced through a Zorthak dreadnought, cutting it cleanly in half before it continued, ripping apart 2 more warships in its path. Explosions blossomed in the void. The Zorthak fleet was being annihilated. On the bridge of his crippled flagship, Zolveth felt the tremors of battle beneath his feet. Reports flooded in, more ships lost. No reinforcements available, human forces closing in. It was over. Humanity was not just fighting back. They were winning. As the Admiral stared at the burning wreckage of his once mighty fleet, another message came through. A human figure, clad in battle-worn armor, his eyes cold as ice, appeared on the holoscreen. "This is General Ethan Drake," the human commander said. His voice was calm, but beneath it was a fury that had been waiting for decades. "You thought we were extinct," he continued. "You thought you had broken us." The general leaned in, his expression unyielding. "But we are humanity. We survive. We rebuild. And now," he gestured to the battlefield, where Zorthak ships burned, their wreckage floating lifelessly in space. "We take back what's ours." Zolveth's heart pounded as he realized the terrible truth. Humanity had never stopped fighting. They had simply been waiting for the right moment to strike. And now, that moment had arrived. The void of space was filled with wreckage. Burning husks of Zorthak warships drifted lifelessly, their once mighty fleet shattered. Humanity had fought back, and against all odds, they had won the first battle. But this war was far from over. Admiral Zolveth's flagship was among the few Zorthak vessels that had survived the ambush at Tartarus Prime. His warriors, the elite of the Empire, had been butchered by human forces. No reinforcements had arrived. No backup. The unthinkable had happened. And yet the humans had let them escape once more. Zolveth stood at the shattered bridge window, his gaze fixed on the distant stars. His body ached from injuries sustained in the battle, but the pain was nothing compared to the humiliation he felt. "Why?" he muttered to himself. "Why didn't they finish us?" The humans had the advantage. They had superior strategy, hidden fleets, and technology far beyond what the Empire had assumed they were capable of. So why had they not delivered the killing blow? A transmission came through. His officers, still shaken, hesitated before patching it through. The screen flickered, and once again, General Ethan Drake's face appeared. The human's expression was unreadable, his blue eyes cold as the void itself. "You survived," Drake said, his voice calm. "Good." Zolveth straightened, his mandibles tightening. "You let us escape." Drake nodded. "Of course." The Zorthak Admiral narrowed his eyes. "Why?" For the first time, a ghost of a smile crossed the human's face. But it was not one of amusement. It was something darker. "Because we want you to go back," Drake said. Zolveth's blood ran cold. "We want your Emperor to know," the human continued. "We want the entire Zorthak Empire to hear the truth." He leaned closer, his voice sharp as a blade. "Humanity was never gone. We were never defeated. We survived in the shadows, watching, waiting. And now we're coming for you." Zolveth clenched his fists. "You think you can challenge the Empire?" Drake's smile widened, but there was no humor in it. "We already have." The transmission cut out. Zolveth's heart pounded. It was a trap. The humans had not simply been hiding. They had been preparing. And now, they were ready. The Zorthak homeworld of Vorkal Prime was the heart of the Empire, a world of towering spires and endless fleets. Its orbital defenses were unmatched. Thousands of warships stood guard, and entire battle stations were positioned around its orbit. It was impenetrable. Or so they thought. In the cold emptiness beyond the system, a shadow moved. The human supercarrier, the same one that had brought destruction to the Empire's fleet, was here. And it was not alone. Hundreds of cloaked warships lurked just beyond sensor range. The final battle was about to begin. General Ethan Drake stood on the command deck of the flagship, his hands clasped behind his back. His soldiers were ready. His fleet was prepared. And now, they would finish what had started decades ago. "This is the moment we have waited for," Drake said, addressing his fleet. "For years we have lived as ghosts, hiding in the dark. They thought we were weak. They thought we were extinct." He turned toward the massive holographic display, showing the Zorthak homeworld, their capital, their heart. "They took everything from us. Our worlds, our families, our future." He looked at the faces of his crew, men and women who had survived the impossible, who had lost loved ones, who had waited for revenge. "But now," Drake said, his voice hard as steel, "we take it back." A silence fell over the crew. Then the order came. Launch the attack. The human fleet decloaked in an instant. Hundreds of warships erupted from the shadows, moving at impossible speeds, their weapons already locked onto the Zorthak defenses. The enemy had no warning, no time to react. The first plasma volleys struck the orbital defenses, sending explosions rippling across the massive battle stations. Zorthak warships scrambled to respond, but the humans were too fast, too precise. Fighter squadrons weaved through enemy fire, their advanced drones cutting through the defenders like they were nothing. The once mighty Zorthak fleets, the pride of the Empire, were being torn apart. On the surface of Vorkal Prime, the Emperor of the Zorthak Empire watched in horror as his empire burned. "This is not possible," he roared. They had simply been waiting for the right moment to strike. And now, that moment had arrived. The void of space was filled with wreckage. Burning husks of Zorthak warships drifted lifelessly, their once mighty fleet shattered. Humanity had fought back, and against all odds, they had won the first battle. But this war was far from over. Admiral Solveth's flagship was among the few Zorthak vessels that had survived the ambush at Tartarus Prime. His warriors, the elite of the Empire, had been butchered by human forces. No reinforcements had arrived. No backup. The unthinkable had happened. And yet the humans had let them escape once more. Zolveth stood at the shattered bridge window, his gaze fixed on the distant stars. His body ached from injuries sustained in the battle, but the pain was nothing compared to the humiliation he felt. "Why?" he muttered to himself. "Why didn't they finish us?" The humans had the advantage. They had superior strategy, hidden fleets, and technology far beyond what the Empire had assumed they were capable of. So why had they not delivered the killing blow? A transmission came through. His officers, still shaken, hesitated before patching it through. The screen flickered, and once again, General Ethan Drake's face appeared. The human's expression was unreadable, his blue eyes cold as the void itself. "You survived," Drake said, his voice calm. "Good." Tolveth straightened, his mandibles tightening. "You let us escape." Drake nodded. "Of course." The Zorthak admiral narrowed his eyes. "Why?" For the first time, a ghost of a smile crossed the human's face, but it was not one of amusement. It was something darker. "Because we want you to go back," Drake said. Zolveth's blood ran cold. "We want your emperor to know," the human continued. "We want the entire Zorthak Empire to hear the truth." He leaned closer, his voice sharp as a blade. "Humanity was never gone. We were never defeated. We survived in the shadows, watching, waiting. And now we're coming for you. Solveth clenched his fists. You think you can challenge the Empire? Drake's smile widened, but there was no humor in it. We already have. The transmission cut out. Zolveth's heart pounded. It was a trap. The humans had not simply been hiding. They had been preparing. And now, they were ready. The Zorthak homeworld of Vorkal Prime was the heart of the Empire, a world of towering spires and endless fleets. Its orbital defenses were unmatched. Thousands of warships stood guard, and entire battle stations were positioned around its orbit. It was impenetrable, or so they thought. In the cold emptiness beyond the system, a shadow moved. The human supercarrier, the same one that had brought destruction to the Empire's fleet, was here, and it was not alone. Hundreds of cloaked warships lurked just beyond sensor range. The final battle was about to begin. General Ethan Drake stood on the command deck of the flagship, his hands clasped behind his back. His soldiers were ready. His fleet was prepared. And now, they would finish what had started decades ago. This is the moment we have waited for, Drake said, addressing his fleet. For years, we have lived as ghosts, hiding in the dark. They thought we were weak. They thought we were extinct. He turned toward the massive holographic display, showing the Zorthak homeworld, their capital, their heart. They took everything from us. Our worlds, our families, our future. He looked at the faces of his crew, men and women who had survived the impossible, who had lost loved ones, who had waited for revenge. But now, Drake said, his voice hard as steel, we take it back. A silence fell over the crew. Then the order came. Launch the attack. The human fleet decloaked in an instant. Hundreds of warships erupted from the shadows, moving at impossible speeds, their weapons already locked onto the Zorthak defenses. The enemy had no warning, no time to react. The first plasma volleys struck the orbital defenses, sending explosions rippling across the massive battle stations. Zorthak warships scrambled to respond, but the humans were too fast, too precise. Fighter squadrons weaved through enemy fire, their advanced drones cutting through the defenders like they were nothing. The once mighty Zorthak fleets, the pride of the Empire, were being torn apart. On the surface of Vorkal Prime, the Emperor of the Zorthak Empire watched in horror as his empire burned. This is not possible, he roared.